One moment, life is ordinary. The next, an explosion changes everything. For the people of Lebanon, this is not a rare occurrence. It's becoming a tragic part of their reality. Just a few days ago, on September 17th, a pager explosion sent shockwaves through a city already on the brink, and by September 18th, another blast followed. What led to this deadly sequence of events? And why is Lebanon, a country the size of Connecticut, becoming a focal point of destruction again? Welcome to my channel, Real Tales. To understand these blasts, we need to look at the broader picture. Lebanon is not just any country. It's a nation grappling with political paralysis, economic collapse, and decades of unrest. In the U.S., we think of disasters as hurricanes or wildfires, events we can see coming and prepare for. But for the Lebanese, their disaster comes in the form of political corruption, instability, and yes, explosions. On the morning of September 17th, a pager blast went off in the southern suburb of Beirut, known as a stronghold for Hezbollah, the powerful political and militant group. This wasn't just some random act of violence. It appears to be part of the ongoing power struggle within the region. But let's break down what we know so far. Initial reports suggest that the blast originated from an explosive device attached to a pager, possibly intended for a high-profile target linked to Hezbollah. This isn't the first time we've seen such methods used in Lebanon. These kinds of attacks have been growing more sophisticated, making it difficult for authorities to prevent them. Unfortunately, the explosion killed and injured several people, most of whom were bystanders. On September 18th, just one day after the pager blast, another explosion hit a different part of the city. This time, the blast was more destructive, damaging buildings and further straining an already overwhelmed healthcare system. While investigations are ongoing, the pattern of violence is becoming more and more alarming. But these explosions are more than just violent attacks. They're a symptom of a much larger problem. Lebanon is on the brink of collapse. Imagine waking up and finding out that your currency has lost over 90% of its value. Imagine going to the store and seeing empty shelves, not because of a supply chain issue like we saw during the pandemic, but because the economy is in total freefall. That's Lebanon today. To give you an idea of how dire the situation is, the World Bank has labeled Lebanon's economic crisis as one of the worst in the world since the mid-19th century. People can't access their savings, unemployment is sky high, and the government is barely functioning. The country's banking system has effectively collapsed, meaning even those with money are struggling to get by. So, how do these blasts fit into this larger story? They represent a breakdown in security, yes, but also a breakdown in trust. Trust in the government to protect its people, trust in the future of the country. And it's this loss of faith that's driving many young Lebanese to protest, despite the dangers. Many feel they have no other choice. These protests are part of a growing movement against the corrupt political elite that has ruled Lebanon for decades. After all, it was just a few years ago that hundreds of thousands of Lebanese took to the streets in what was called the October Revolution, demanding the resignation of the entire government. They wanted better lives, but what they got instead was a worsening crisis, further compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. And let's not forget, Lebanon is still reeling from the massive explosion at the port of Beirut in August 2020. A disaster that killed over 200 people, injured thousands, and caused billions of dollars in damages. The government promised an investigation, but like so many things in Lebanon, it's been bogged down by political infighting and lack of transparency. This legacy of unaddressed issues has only deepened the mistrust people feel toward those in power. So, where does this leave Lebanon now? For many, the future looks bleak. And while the blasts on September 17th and 18th may not dominate headlines here in the U.S., they are a stark reminder of how fragile life has become in Lebanon. As Americans, we may feel far removed from these events, But we can't ignore the fact that instability in the Middle East often has ripple effects around the world, whether it's through oil prices, refugee flows, or broader regional conflicts. For the people of Lebanon, it's not just about surviving another explosion. It's about trying to build a life in a country where the ground keeps shifting beneath their feet. And for us, it's about understanding how interconnected our world really is. What happens there can impact all of us, even if it feels distant. Keep them in your thoughts. Stay aware, stay informed.